Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. I am here with Pratt Rogers. I am Stephen Willis. This is an extra edition of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and we're going to talk about big wins, where that ranks, and we're probably just going to talk a little bit about the Ole Miss football program at large right now, because there are some players that are all of a sudden are taking official visits to Ole Miss now, and there's a lot of good stuff that is happening for Ole Miss football. So how you doing, Pratt?
Man, doing great. How are you? Glad to be on, especially on such a momentous occasion.
Yeah, it was a good month. I told people on one of my podcasts this week that September was about survival, because you have Alabama and LSU in the same month, and you needed to find a way to get one of them and get past the other non-conference trap games. And Ole Miss did just that. And now every goal that they have is absolutely in front of them. Now they need Alabama to lose a game or two, or a three-way tie to happen, but that is possible. You have a situation where Auburn's going to be tricky, Texas A&M's going to be tricky, Georgia's going to be tricky, but not as tricky as we thought it was going into the season. And the rest of the schedule is a whole bunch of teams that's probably worse off than they normally are. Even this Arkansas team. You have Arkansas coming into Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. They're 2-3. They are a desperately wounded animal. If Arkansas loses this game, they go to 2-4 with Alabama in Bryant-Denny next. This is an interesting situation where Ole Miss has gone from the number one most difficult schedule in the country to just having a tricky pull of things, but maybe not as hard as we thought it was.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, you mentioned Texas A&M. I watched the A&M Arkansas game. You know, A&M's really starting to scare me. I think everybody's been discounting Jimbo for so long that it's almost like a look past game. But, I mean, their front seven looks really dirty. And, you know, I was kind of pulling for Arkansas in that game. But, man, yeah, Arkansas is going to come in desperate, and A&M looked really sharp, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's looking like College Game Day. I have no idea what the slate looks like, but College Game Day may be Texas A&M versus Ole Miss. Yep. That's the way it's looking at the moment.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting, not to jump too far ahead, but that'll be an interesting matchup, just kind of their run defense versus Judkins. And anyway, can't wait for that one too.
Yeah, let's go back in time. We're still looking back at the LSU game, and just so everybody knows, we're recording this on Monday, so we're not still talking about this on Tuesday. But you have a situation to where do you think this win ranks in the Ole Miss lore? I mean, you start to think about really big wins, and just because with 5 minutes left, you were down by like 9 points. I mean, this is a pretty big deal for Lane Kiffin and this Ole Miss team.
Man, great question. Look, I want to give a quick shout out to Curtis Telfer and Wirt Dunbar. They kind of brought this to my attention in a group text. They were like, look, where do y'all think this game ranks? Is this a top 10 game in our Ole Miss career over the last, I'm 30, hate saying that out loud now, Stephen, but over the last 30 years, where does that kind of rank? And immediately, you know, is 1 second after the game ended, and I thought, gosh, I just don't know if this is a top 10 game. Then I started really diving into it, and I put together a list of 12 or 13 games, and this is right there with it. I mean, one of the games on the list, I thought, you know, the Arkansas game with Corral was just such a great game. But remember, Arkansas wasn't ranked in that game. It was just a barn burner of a game, 52-51. And, I mean, so where does that rank? I mean, anyway, I think kind of diving into it, Stephen, I really thought this had potential to be a top 10 win in my lifetime, which is hard to believe. And, you know, they were a number 13 team in the nation. So where does that stand? I believe it's, if not a top 10 win ever, it's got to be close, right?
Yeah, you have a situation like in 2020, the COVID year, where Mac Jones was quarterback in Alabama. And I know that Alabama was like 1, 2, or 3, somewhere in there ranked. But This game was like Ole Miss coming back in the fourth quarter, Ole Miss doing to Alabama what Alabama did to Ole Miss that night. So you automatically have the upset, even though it wasn't much of an upset. LSU was favored by 2.5 points. But the way, being down by 9 points with 5 minutes to go in the game, the defense, who for 2 quarters was completely unable to get off the field and completely getting boat raced by that offense, getting 3 out of 4 stops to end that game, to slam the door. That makes it almost more impressive than actually just beating the 13th team in the country, which has happened several times. But this is a big moment for Ole Miss, I think.
Yeah, and Stephen, you and I kind of talked offline. It 100% was the manner in which the game was won. I think some people gave Ole Miss fans flack for storming the field after beating a number 13 team, but it's just such an emotionally gut-wrenching game the entire time. I don't think anybody ever felt good about it for 1 second of the game, and I think that was the cause for euphoria. It had storming the field primarily, just honestly relief.
Yeah, last year LSU stormed the field again after they beat Ole Miss, and Ole Miss with 9th or 10th or somewhere, and that it was really similar. The 2 wins. So LSU just doing sour grapes about the storming the field. They need to quit worrying about that, considering they've stormed the field twice in the last decade after beating Ole Miss.
Well, I also saw, some people are getting caught up on the fine for storming the field, and that is like the least of my concerns. I do not care what the fine is at all. That's not even a discussion point. Now, if they do ever start taking away home games like we've discussed, I think that's time to quit storming the field. But if it's a $100,000 fine, that's chump change to an SEC school. Move on, man. Not even worth discussing.
One really cool thing that LSU does that I wish Ole Miss did is they have a GoPro set up in the corner of their radio booth, and it just is on them as they are calling the radio call of the ball game, and it's on YouTube.
Oh, that's awesome. So that would be the equivalent of like David Kellum being live.
Yeah, so they're David Kellum. I watched like the last 4 minutes of him actually calling the game to where you can see their reaction and their body language and what's going on the field. Now, I thought it was pretty cool to see.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I kind of wish Ole Miss would do something similar to that.
I would have loved to have seen the Auburn announcer on the kick 6 versus Bama.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, that is such a epic call. That whole series was just unbelievable. Having a GoPro for a game like that would be unbelievable.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to see, like, you see all the emotions and everything, but maybe David Kellum, and I know David. I mean, he was there when I was there because, he's been there forever. But I don't know if he emotes when he talks, because everybody jokes about David Yellum and all of that, but I don't know if he actually emotes to where you can visibly see what's going on with him in the booth, because I've never seen that. So it would be interesting if he is, because me, whenever I talk with my hands and I'm always going around like this. Maybe David Kellum is just going absolutely nuts, and he just looks just like this, just very stoic and still. And so maybe it's not intriguing video, but I think it would be pretty cool because you can see the messages being passed and things like that. I think it would be cool.
Yeah, for sure. And, David Kellum's probably seen plenty of heartbreak, and he probably is pretty stoic about it. That's a good adjective.
Yeah, and also it would be good to go in a game like this. There's people that have watched the broadcast that would like to hear the radio broadcast. So it's up on YouTube for all time. So you can hear that reaction and see the visible reaction on David Kellum whenever the ball goes incomplete and Ole Miss wins that game. Because I imagine that would be a really cool shot.
For sure. Absolutely. Like one of my favorite David Kellum calls ever was when Tunzel caught the pass in the Sugar Bowl. And his line was something along the lines of, and the big man trots into the end zone. It's Laramie Tunzel. And that was just electric. I would have loved to have seen that, right as halftime's ending in the Sugar Bowl. I mean, that's incredible. I would have loved to have seen that for sure.
Yeah, I think that needs to be our new thing that we campaign for, is just a camera on the radio feed and broadcast that out. I don't care if it's on the Ole Miss official YouTube page. I don't care if it's on the Super Talk official YouTube page. I think that would be really cool to blast out so everybody can see the day of, because basically what's going to happen is people are going to go into comments and really cool things. They're going to note the time, and you can just click that link and go straight to it. And I think that would be really cool. I know we're off track a little bit here, but yeah, I would watch that. I would look at that. I watched the LSU broadcast.
Yeah, and even like incorporating it into the season for like the cinematography majors or whatever, the YouTube series, the season, that would be awesome. That's kind of the insider access that people who watch that YouTube documentary are looking for. Anyway, we can pivot, but I think that'd be awesome.
I think they should have GoPros in there, and they should have GoPros in the staff room as well. So
yes,
the thing like the Chris Partridge where you saw all the belly and all that, anytime there's a big play, you have that to go to as well. Yeah, I think it would be really cool. But what do we know? But we'd watch it. Yeah. So pivoting a little bit to the Arkansas Razorback, this is a game that is always drunk. This is a game that is always nuts. If you look at the last two games in this series, and everybody's going to look at the scores and they think nothing's going on. But you have the 52-51 game that happened in 2021 with Matt Corral. Unbelievable game. That got done. The year before, you had the 6 interception game. The year after, you had the Lane Kiffin to Auburn game, to where the announcers were all talking about all of that going on. It's something about this game that causes all the weird stuff to happen. And I'm wondering if this is going to be the normal game to where Ole Miss just kind of boat races and moves on to the next one.
Well, look, the saving grace is against Arkansas. A lot of our problems have been in Fayetteville, I feel like. A lot of those losses have been in Fayetteville. Obviously, this is a home game this year. I don't have it in front of me, Stephen, but I feel like in Fayetteville, we've lost like the last 7 or something like that. That may be wrong.
I think since 2008. I think it's been since 2008.
Probably about right then. But all that to say, I mean, thank God this one's at home. I haven't seen the line yet on it. I'm guessing.
Oh, we're favored by 11.5.
Oh, wow. That's higher than I thought, honestly. Yeah. I don't know what I think about that. I mean, Arkansas is not a bad.
Arkansas is not very good.
Well, I was about to say, I don't think they're necessarily deemed a bad team, Stephen. I mean, they have KJ Jefferson, who is an elite quarterback. Nobody can take that away. He's a really good player. Rocket Sanders has been hurt most of the year. He didn't look that great against A&M. Yeah. He couldn't look fine. But outside of that, their defense is meh. Their offensive line is meh. Their wide receivers, one of their best wide receivers is a transfer from a D2 school. It's just a situation that there's a whole lot of meh. And they're doing a little bit. Arkansas is doing kind of what Cam Newton did at Auburn, to where that team had no business winning the national championship. Just Cam was just so much better than everybody else. Arkansas has no business going to a bowl game, but KJ is going to get them to Birmingham. Well, look,
I think that's what we're looking at.
The big thing about this season, I feel like, is where does the SEC West rack up? Now we're starting to get a few defined roles within who's where within the SEC. I mean, I would not put Arkansas at the bottom of the SEC West right now.
No, that's Mississippi State. That's firmly Mississippi State.
Yeah, and I think a lot depends on our game for them too. I mean, obviously they lost a close-ish game to A&M, but it kind of ran away at the end. But I mean, this is a team that still scares me for sure. Maybe it's
just because of the drunkenness of the game in Vaught Hemingway Stadium. We know something weird's going to happen. We just don't know what.
Yep. And 11.5 is a lot stronger line than I was expecting. I was expecting somewhere around 8.5, maybe 7, somewhere in there. But
Chad Morris line.
Yeah. I just, I don't know, Steven. I'm probably not even. I probably have no commentary on that line. How about that?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think Ole Miss is going to cover it. Everybody tells me that Ole Miss and Arkansas is going to come down and play hard, and I get that Arkansas always plays Ole Miss well, all of this stuff. But at a certain point, a bad team is just bad. And whenever KJ becomes the focal point of that team, which everybody on Ole Miss's team is going to be focused on KJ and Rocket Sanders, those two not beating Ole Miss in the run game. And if you eliminate that and force him to throw the football, how is Arkansas going to keep up with how much we're scoring?
I agree with that 100%. Look, I think that's everybody's game plan, though, playing Arkansas. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a secret. And had this been an 11 o'clock game, I would be even more concerned, coming off a big win versus LSU, maybe come out a little sloppy in the beginning. But, this is a night game. I think the stadium will be slammed. I don't think there will be any letdown in capacity, anything like that. I think it'll be really loud. This is probably pretty close to a sold-out game, in my opinion. I mean, I think everybody's really feeling good about the trajectory of the team in comparison to this time last week.
As of Monday afternoon, there was 1,500 tickets left for this Arkansas game.
Wow. Wow.
So it's going to be a hard sellout, just like the LSU game was, which that's awesome because this team deserves it because
for sure.
I've been pounding the drum on this for months that this is the most talented team that Ole Miss has put on the field in my lifetime. And everybody is going to watch this team and they're feeding on the energy and they're handling adversity and all of the stuff to where people say you cannot be a transfer school and all of those things. Ole Miss is kind of proving right now that it might take a little bit. You might be a little bit of a yo-yo team, but the highs have a chance to be really, really high. Now, I have a question for you, Pratt.
Sure.
NFL draft, one of the NFL draft sites were ranking quarterbacks, and they ranked Jackson Dart as the number 31 quarterback in the 2024 draft. And if that 31. happens, Jackson Dart is coming back. He's going to play because that's not a draftable grade.
Was this a preseason?
Probably. That's probably likely what it was. But if that's where Jackson's coming from, and that's where he's starting, I mean, they had Shedeur Sanders number 3, so maybe they've updated it since the beginning of September. But if that happens, Jackson's coming back. Ole Miss is the better for it because let me be clear with everybody. I've thought that Jackson Dart was throw for 3,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions and go pro because he earned it. Now it looks like he's going to do that. And the draft grades being as weird as they are, I think Ole Miss might have a chance to keep him. And if Ole Miss has a chance to keep him, go ahead and book tickets in that 12-team playoff next year, folks.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a super special team. And you know what? I mean, we will be having a lot of quarterback controversy discussions if he stays for the 2024 season because
I don't think you have to worry about Walker Howard because Walker Howard's stuck. There's really nowhere to go. Austin Simmons, there would probably be an interesting situation, but I don't know that he would necessarily run either because this is the thing with Austin Simmons. In 2024, in December, he will get his bachelor's degree. So he might not transfer because he's so close literally to his degree.
Did you mean his high school degree? Is that what you're saying?
No, his bachelor's degree. December of 2024, Austin Simmons is supposed to graduate from college.
That is unbelievable. I knew he had like collegiate credit, but I had no idea. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think that is, I can't remember exactly where I heard that, but I think I heard that from his father.
Didn't he have like a 5.3 GPA or something ridiculous coming out of high school?
Yeah, that's just because it was all AP credits and things like that.
It's just
they do all, like it was normally just a 4-point scale when I was school.
Yeah, but, same.
Yeah, and it's like it's interesting. Austin Simmons, he flashes. He has all the talent in the world. He is going, if Jackson Dart goes pro, which still is listen to everybody. That's still a legit possibility. I mean, the way that Jackson's going and the way this could go in the next 3 months, yes, December could look completely different for him. But if that happens and he goes pro, Austin Simmons and Walker Howard's going to be the greatest quarterback competition in the history of Ole Miss. That is going to be an absolute war, and Ole Miss is going to be better for it, whoever wins the job.
Man, it is just looking back. I know I don't even want to bring it up today, but Spencer Sanders, I mean, just such a weird deal now. I mean, looking back at how much progress Dart's already made through 5 games of the season, I mean, kind of just a weird spot for him. I just, I hope that the future holds bright things for him.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's going to be all right. He still has the Louisiana Monroe game, the Vandy game, a couple of games on the schedule, the Mississippi State game where he could get some mop-up duty. But, I mean, he thought he was coming in to start. And one of the things I said when all this happened, he always said he always will bet on himself. And that, that's fine. That's great. Always bet on yourself. But when you bet, there's a chance you lose. Otherwise it would not be called a bet.
Yep.
And it just happened. And it might be a situation where he's going to get some mop-up duty. Spencer Sanders is the type quarterback that has a chance to be a 10-year CFL vet. I mean, he is perfect for up there.
Are you surprised about the lack of utilization he's had thus far? I mean, you and I talked about the Bama game, maybe getting some action in that game. I think he got one snap when Dart's helmet came off. Like,
you made it through Alabama and LSU without it, and now it's at the point it's just Jackson's team.
Yeah,
I mean, and honestly, if you look at the way he played against LSU, it should be
for sure.
And I mean, you feel bad for Spencer, but at the end of the day, what happened in the reality thing is he decided to go into the transfer portal potentially because he wanted to get paid. I mean, there's people that do that all the time. And then whenever he saw it wasn't as favorable as he thought it would be, he tried to go back to Oklahoma State, but their coach is basically an old curmudgeon. He's Dabo Swinney on crack, and they don't do the transfer portal, and he wasn't welcomed back. And at that point, he had to find a place to go. And there was I think if I'm not mistaken, there was a week left until school started or something like that. And if he wanted to be a starting quarterback, he had to be in there in spring. And we heard about Auburn and we heard about Ole Miss. And I think Lane Kiffin took him so Auburn couldn't, honestly. And just in case it didn't work out with Jackson in the spring practice, which it obviously we know it did, he'd have an insurance policy and it wouldn't have to go to Walker or Austin Simmons or any, something like that. So he had Spencer in there as an insurance policy, but Jackson, proved that it was not necessary. And at that point, Spencer was like, hey, hold a clipboard, play in the CFL, save some hits from your body.
Yep. Not a bad lifestyle though.
Yeah.
Maybe not the dream, but also not in the cellar. How about that?
Jeremiah Masoli played in the Canadian Football League until this year. He got hurt this year. So I guess technically he's still there. So up there they play a different brand of football, and quarterbacks like Masoli and like Spencer Sanders, they can do pretty well. Jackson Dart, like I said, his NFL draft stock I think is going to skyrocket over the next 3 months. But if it doesn't and he decides to come back, this is the playoff team next year.
Well, look, I think that one thing we both agreed on and one adjective we used to describe the LSU game was resiliency. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I'm just proud to see that in this team. And, if you can carry that kind of mindset into 24, I think things could be really special.
Listen, I'm probably about to use profanity. I might not, but I might. Whenever you go into the second and third quarter and you just get your ass kicked, for lack of a better word, by LSU, the defense could do no wrong. The defense could do no right. They could not stop LSU, could not get a stop. And then somehow in the fourth quarter, you're able to get 3 out of 4 stops. and allow your team to win the game. That is why Pete Golding was hired. That's why he was brought in a game like Arkansas where nobody could get a stop, or a game like that Alabama game when it could get absolutely weird, because Lane plays an offensive system where games can get weird at times. Can you find a way to get the stop? And Pete Golding gets all that money to make that stop, to figure it out. And 3 out of 4 stops in the fourth quarter, Ole Miss won 21-7 to close out that game. Absolutely fantastic. Pete Golding gave up 49 points and was one of the stars of that football game. That is the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah, it's also just a confidence thing. It's like, he's been there, done that. And when the chips are on the table, everybody, I feel like, in the fan base has faith he'll get it done and figure it out. And that's kind of what you want in a leader, a CEO of a company, whatever that may be. When times get tough, you want to be able to look at your go-to guys and say, hey, man, big-time players step up and make big-time plays and big-time scenarios. And Golding had, for lack of a better term, had to make big-time plays calling the defense. And that's kind of what happened.
And last year, when he was at Alabama down at Tiger Stadium, he wasn't able to get the stop. LSU went down and won the game, I think in overtime or something like that. Jaden Daniels got hot, just like he did in Oxford. He wasn't able to get that stop. And so maybe it took him 7 quarters to figure it out, but at the end, he figured out something that would work against that offensive team. So I'm pretty fired up. Anyway, before we get out of here, we've been on for nearly a half hour. Tell me who you think is going to win Saturday. Give me a score prediction.
Man, that's tough. Knowing the line is, what'd you say, 11.5, right?
11.5.
11.5. I think, and that's high, but I'll say Ole Miss wins by 10. It's comfortable, but I'll say 31-21, good guys, something like that.
Okay. That's a good way to go. And I'll give my prediction during Thursday's show whenever we do the crossover. I'm still trying to set that up with John Neighbors. So you'll get to hear my prediction then. But as somebody said, I would pick Ole Miss to win against the Philadelphia Eagles, and I probably would.
Well, let me ask you before we get out of here, do you see us implementing, Sunturn Perkins as a spy against KJ, anything like that?
Jaden Daniels was faster than everybody on Ole Miss's defense, literally every single player. Sunturn Perkins is faster than KJ Jefferson. So this is going to be a situation that looks more like Jalen Milroe than Jaden Daniels, just due to the athleticism. Now, it's hard to tackle. I mean, KJ is probably 30 pounds heavier than Sunturn. But I do think that is going to be the avenue for success. Ole Miss needs to win this game. Just win this game by 1 point, get to the halfway point at 5-1, and this has a chance to get fun as the season progresses.
All righty. Good deal. I agree.
All right. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Pratt, thank you so much for joining the show. We'll talk to you next week, buddy.
Thanks, Steven. See you, man.
All right. Howdy toddy.